bud got me choking. I'm on a mission to the point that motherfuckers think I'm smoking. Yeah, that sick nigga Biggie with the 8-shot fifth, with the extra clip for that extra shit. Don't you know that a killing?
Alright boys, we're back on the Supra. So as I said before, this was super last minute and unplanned, this project. So I didn't really have the most time to spend, get these cool camera angles, film the car or the project like I did the R34 Skyline. So we do have minimal footage we're working with to explain everything step by step. But before we get stuck into this episode and do more work on the car, it's been a couple of weeks since the previous episode. So let's have a quick look at what happened previously. In the previous few videos of the Supra restoration or rebuild, however you guys may want to call it, I introduced the car to you guys, showed the condition and what we are working with. Now, for the most part, there are still a lot of things missing off the car, both from the interior and the exterior, but for the price I paid, it was 1,550 Australian dollars. You can't really complain, and it's a perfect, slate to build upon. So the type of work I do, as you guys could probably see, is mainly everything to do with bodywork, and that's exactly what this episode is about, the next episode, and probably the one after. Now, I don't really want to bore you guys with too much details because most of the videos I have filmed so far are about bodywork, and I'd really like to get into more wiring and engine work, get these cars running and enjoy them on the street so I can film the vlogs that I really want to film, like traveling Australia in any of my cars when they start running. So previously, I did strip all the paint off the car using a chemical paint stripper along with different grit of sandpaper on the Whizzer or the DA sander, along with using a sandblaster that looked like it was from Chernobyl, and I used that for things like the beaver panel, the door jambs, and the engine bay. Now, once the car was completely stripped, I did miss a couple of steps and didn't film them, such as removing the remainder of the interior, the wiring harness, the front subframe, the fuel tank, and the rear subframe, meaning that this is now a completely bare shell like it came from the factory, but obviously it is 25 years old and in not the best condition. But the car was then put on the rotisserie, and I did have a last minute trip to Sydney, which you guys would have seen in the previous two vlogs, meaning that the car sat around probably for about a week or week and a half in bare metal, which really isn't ideal as moisture does collect on the bare metal and it starts oxidizing. So we had small amounts of surface rust that can be sanded off to an extent, but some of the stuff that you won't be able to see by eye, you have to use a rust converter. So the rust converter used is made by a company called KBS. It's called Rust Blast. Turns any small particles of rust into black little dots. You just wipe it off with water, believe it or not, that's how you neutralize the chemical, and then you are ready for your next step. So what I did is I used an epoxy primer. There are different ways to seal the bare metal, such as 1K etch primers and stuff like that. Personally, I would really stay away from that. It's old school tech. If you're already going this far, you might as well do it properly. So you have to use some form of direct to metal primer. In my case, I used an epoxy primer made by PPG called PPG 408. It is mixed 4:1, and I also add about 20% reducer, the dedicated reducer for this epoxy primer made by PPG, and spray it on the car. Now, any panels that are going to be seeing body filler or repairs, I add about 2 to 3 coats, as it is a very thin build, allowing me to at least get a little bit of a bite with my sandpaper before blowing down to the bare metal, if that does happen. So as you can see on the rear quarter panel, any shiny spots are the areas that the sandpaper did not make contact with, because these blocks are nice and flat. They are the linear blocking tools. We can talk about it more in the next episode. This means that any shiny spots are known as low spots. This can be anything from a small ripple to a dent, and for example, if you go outside and you check your car, whether it be an old car, a new car, or one that you had freshly repainted, you'll see that at the start of the door, at the end of the door, and around the door handle, there will be a little bit of a dip. That's a manufacturing defect, if you may say. Fuck's sake, who's calling me now? Hold up, I'm going to have to continue this voiceover in a second. How to make those areas nice and flat again. So you have to use a small amount of body filler in those areas, or you can metal finish it, obviously, but that is a very lengthy, costly, and involving process. For a small amount of body filler can repair this, and you won't have any problems because it's a very minimal amount used. So something I did not know before starting on this R34 is that exact thing. And how I wanted to rectify this, and I want every project to be better than the next, is figured, all right, let's do this Supra completely bolted together. So Pep and I spent 5 or 6 hours adjusting all the panel gaps on this car to make it all fit nicely. Now, don't freak out if you're doing this at home. The Toyota Supra does have relatively big panel gaps compared to something like a Skyline, but we did our best to make it fit all nicely. Now, I know what some are thinking. The car's on the rotisserie, it's off its weight, and the chassis can potentially flex. Firstly, this is a small coupe. Secondly, it's a hardtop, not a target top. And thirdly, it's not a Nissan, it is a Toyota. This thing is really nicely built, and I really don't think it'll flex to the point where we do all our bodywork up in the air, we put the car back on its own weight, and now the panels are sitting closer to one another. I really don't think that's going to happen, but in the future and future builds, I won't be doing this exact same process. Instead, I'll block the whole car with its panels bolted together, but when the car is on its own weight, whether it be on its own wheels or a chassis jig where it is mounted to its pickup points, such as the front and rear strut towers and chassis rails, for example. The most involving process of this entire job so far is the filler work and the blocking. This is what takes up the most time, and the blocks I'm using, they are linear blocking tools. I'm going to go right into detail about the entire kit that I bought and how they are better than Durablocks or anything else I've used so far. But that's not what we're talking about in this episode. That'll come in the next. Now, before you smash your keyboard that I'm building a whole car out of filler, hear me out. As I mentioned before, many of these panels are never pressed perfectly from the factory, and when I look down one of my cars, I want it to be one continuous straight. So skimming the panels and blocking them all together is one way to rectify it. Ideally, you want the metal finish to a degree where minimal body filler will be applied, but many restorers and pretty much everybody building a show car will use body filler. You see their process of metal working the car, whether they're fabricating a panel from scratch or repairing a damaged area, and then by the end of it, they're lightly skimming the panel to make sure it is all nice and straight. This might also be done to sharpen up some body lines. So as you can see, I'm applying the body filler relatively heavy. This is done for two reasons. First reason is I haven't had much experience with filler. And second reason is I'd rather put too much on and spend more time sanding than having to reapply. And doing the whole panel at once is just easier than doing little bits and bobs. As you can see, once sanding is complete, it is only sections that have thin skims over it. There is also the debate between whether to apply filler over bare metal or epoxy primer. Epoxy primer is the correct way to do it. Instead of me explaining, I'm going to link a video below in the description by Colton, the guy who's made these sanding blocks, who explains why you should not fill over bare metal. Now, I know that bodywork isn't the most fun thing to do, but in my opinion, that's really what makes the car a nice paint job, a nice straight car. So bear with me, this is the sort of work I do, and everything I do, I document and put it on YouTube and stuff like that. Look, I'd love to be building 1,000 horsepower engines, but I'm not in the financial position to do so. I don't have the knowledge to do so. We're taking it one step at a time. Somebody might find out about this channel in 2 or 3 years time, and we're doing that sort of stuff, but at this current stage, we're still growing. This is all baby steps for me, and it's exciting, and I think I've finally grown. I don't know if I'm sort of maturing up slowly, or I've finally realized that you gotta take it easy. Obviously, not as in, oh, I'm not going to rock up to the workshop for 2 weeks. Take it easy as in, be patient. This stuff takes time, and when you're patient and when you take your time, you end up doing it right the first time, most of the time, and you get the result that you wanted straight away. Compared to rushing through it, you end up stressing yourself out, you stuff things up. But anyways, I think I'm going off topic. I've let go of a few projects. I haven't even introduced this car, but I'll talk a little bit about it in a future episode because I bought 2 Skylines in 2 days, and this is one of them. Decided to sell it to fund the Toyota Supra. That's going to be the first car that sees the road, and I finally think I've prioritized having a running car for the sake of myself. It'd be nice to have something nice to drive compared to having a bunch of cars that are broken in the workshop, and also for the sake of the YouTube channel, I get to make content outside this workshop, show you guys what Australia's like, and yeah, I get to travel Australia, and yeah, it'd be nice to just sort of sit in something, whether it be a daily driver or whether it's just a weekend car or whatever, sit in it, take it for a drive, get my mind off for a couple of things, and seeing a finished product of something. Like, I remember even seeing the Skyline when it was in a driving state, rocking up to the workshop, and you're like, all right, that thing's broken, but that's what it's gonna look like when it's done. It's real motivating seeing that, and seeing a personal car that I can do that on a daily basis, I think is gonna be a good thing. So I'm talking too much shit. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe. We're at nearly 100,000 subs. I never say that, but just hit the subscribe button if you like this sort of content, and comment below. I read everything. Alright. Catch you later.